Conservation League is opposed to offshore oil and gas drilling because of the serious environmental effects that it could have on our coast, because of the impacts it could have on tourism and our economy. Honestly, you don't have to look far to see why we're concerned. We've got an oil rig leaking 42,000 gallons a day in the Gulf. That's with the latest technology. And just this weekend, an oil slick, which is currently the size of Rhode Island, is going to start reaching the beaches in Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana. Those reserves out there have been predicted to be very small. It's simply not worth the risk. They're not going to reduce the price of gas or reduce our dependence on foreign oil. So we're very much opposed to it.
Some of the speakers from the industry mentioned the enormous possible economic gains in terms of jobs and taxable income and just general growth to the economy. Does the Coastal Conservation League have to say about that?
We also have tremendous gains to be made in alternative energies that are cleaner and don't risk our number one industry today, which is tourism in South Carolina, and don't risk our quality of life and the things that we really care about in South Carolina. It's pretty hard to clean up an oil spill from a salt marsh.
Yeah, Oceana is opposed to both offshore oil drilling and seismic testing. Offshore oil drilling can be very catastrophic for marine wildlife, and it's certainly not going to solve our energy problems. We need to be investing in renewable sources of energy, such as offshore wind, instead of more drilling. And seismic testing is the process they use to explore for oil and find out if there's likely viable sources under the seabed. And that process itself is very dangerous for marine wildlife, and it's been linked to strandings of marine mammals such as whales. We've got the right whale, which is a critically endangered species off the coast here, and that would certainly be affected by seismic testing, as well as other marine wildlife which are also affected. It can affect their hearing, it can lead to disorientation, strandings, etc. It's not a good process, and one that we staunchly oppose. As you can't get somebody to believe something when their paycheck depends on them not understanding it. And so with us, we take a step back and we look at the bigger picture, which is that we've got, oceans that are critically in danger right now, of all sorts of different problems, and one of them is acidification from climate change. Drilling for oil and using more oil is only going to accelerate climate change and make that problem worse.
I have a minor bone to pick with Oceana in general.
Okay.
I received an email about this issue from I believe, Jackie Savitz, that said, tell President Obama that we're upset that he's breaking his promise about offshore oil. And it's stated in that email that President Obama has always been against offshore oil and suddenly changed his mind a few weeks ago. But the nonpartisan fact-checker site PolitiFact found that he was early in the campaign against offshore drilling, but in August of 2008, well before the election, he became for offshore drilling. And I agree with everything that you're saying about the possible impacts that this could have, but the tone of that email was President Obama has broken a promise, when really he hadn't done that. Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with his original stance.
Okay.
I've certainly seen video from, I believe it was June 2008.
Yes.
Before what you're discussing as August 2008, I've seen him talking about it, I think quite eloquently, that offshore drilling is not going to solve the problems of our energy needs, and it's going to cause major problems for marine wildlife and for the oceans in general. And so I think what Jackie was referring to was clearly that original stance.
Okay.
Now, I followed the Obama campaign, but I can't specifically remember the chronology of his specific stances on this, and so I can't quite speak to that.
Fair enough.
But I do know that at some, as you also know, that at some point in his campaign he was staunchly against it, and for reasons that sounded quite accurate.
All right. Some politicos have said that this is President Obama's decision to allow offshore oil exploration is really just sort of trading favors to maybe gain a few votes from the Republican Party and the climate change bill that is presently stalled in the Senate. If that works, do you think that the gains of a strong climate bill would outweigh the costs of offshore drilling if allowing offshore drilling convinces a few swing votes?
Well, you say the gains of a strong climate bill. Let's see the bill. We haven't seen the bill yet, and so we can't speculate on whether or not the bill is going to be strong or not going to be strong. Oceana has yet to make a stance on a bill because we haven't seen the bill. Let's take a look at the bill, and then we'll figure that out. Our oceans are not a trading point. and that, generally Oceana feels strongly that, if we're going to make deals to make certain legislation stronger or weaker, that we shouldn't be using our oceans and all the myriad species that depend on them for their lives as a trading point for political compromises. This is not appropriate, and it's certainly not going to take us where we need to go long term. If any of your readers or viewers want to get involved, please do go to oceana.org. You can send me an email. That's mdundas@oceana.org. And check out our website. Certainly you should stay abreast of this issue. It's certainly in the newspaper and on television somewhat. But write Barack Obama a letter. Write to your congressperson, your senators. Get in touch with your decision makers and let them know how you feel about this issue, particularly if you oppose it.
What is the Nature Conservancy's position on offshore oil exploration and offshore oil drilling?
Well, the Nature Conservancy is still working on its formal position on offshore oil and gas exploration and drilling. What we really focus on is the relationship between different uses and the biodiversity in the ocean. So our key issues and concerns is the where and where will oil and gas drilling occur, how does that relate to priority conservation areas that are out there, and priority species. So we're really looking at it from a spatial standpoint. What's the relationship and what's the potential impact? And we're still looking at that analysis. There's a balance between human need and environmental need. And so in any decision that we make, we try to look at what that relationship and that balance is, with our priority being biodiversity conservation, but recognizing that there's also a human conservation need that maybe has some conflict with it. So what we try to do is we try to take the best available data that is out there, be it, for instance, information on where key habitats are located that would support a multitude of different species. And then what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, well, if this is going to happen, let's avoid these higher biodiversity areas. So that's really where what we're talking about in terms of spatial and looking for finding a balance comes in, is trying to find this location where we maintain our high biodiversity and high conservation areas with the recognition that there may be other places that any type of use, be it wind energy or oil or gas, has potential.
Is there anything else you would like to say about offshore oil exploration or what the Nature Conservancy is doing in regards to the oceans or anything like that?
Yeah, I think this is a unique time for the South Atlantic coast, not only from a standpoint of, for the first time in my lifetime, really, there's the potential for oil and gas drilling off the Atlantic. And at the same time, we're looking at alternative energies, the potential for wind energy off our coast or wave or current energy in certain locations. And I think it's put a new emphasis on our offshore environment that we haven't really thought about. We've spent a lot of time thinking about our immediate coastal areas, our estuaries and our beaches, but thinking a bit further offshore. And the diversity that really is out there is not just an open plain. If you look under the water, the ocean has valleys and canyons and different bottom habitats, just like our land does. And so I see this as an opportunity, in part, just to understand the diversity that we have offshore when you move away from our beaches, the importance that's there. And so it's a challenging time because we're trying to face new activities. At the same time, it's been great to get more engaged in the offshore